this will mostly be a AEW Full Gear pay-per-view review and all of that stuff. So there we go, and then we'll talk some other things too. But yeah, so let's kind of get started. I got a lot of things I want to talk about. Probably want to get through them kind of quick. I should start off by kind of finishing off because I've been talking about the ROH Pure Title Tournament. I watched the final show. The show was okay. As I continually kept saying, I felt like the video packages for the tournament were amazing. Unfortunately, the matches just did not live up to them, and I think that was a big problem. I was hoping that at least the final would be like really great, even though I thought each round needed at least like one really good match or great match that people would talk about, and we didn't get that. In fact, I think we got one of the weaker matches for the final. I liked the fact that Jonathan Gresham won. I thought that they kind of, if you watch it, Jay Lethal's really good. I'm not like a big giant Jay Lethal fan. I said, I think on my last video, I talked about the fact that I felt like ROH was, they just didn't have like a lot of the talent. And I understand that there's a lot of talent that's not there. But even so, if you take kind of the CMLL talent and the guys that used to be in CMLL and you take them out, I don't feel like there's like a lot of there's not a lot there. And I love Jay Lethal. I think Jay Lethal's really good. I think Jay Lethal as a TV champion is really good, but him being like one of the main event guys is a good example of just not them needing to like kind of load up a little bit, right? And that's no disrespect to him because I think he has like great matches. I just think that they're missing that sort of thing. Roosh without a doubt is, one of those guys, but you need like not just like a guy that you brought in from who used to be, you don't need just that. You need like, they've had time. But that's beside the point. The show, like I said, was okay. There was a 6-man with Shane Taylor and his guys versus EC3 and the Briscoes. I felt this match was like okay. It felt like it was really slow. I don't know if that was because of EC3. I don't know if that was, because of everything else, but it just wasn't there. And part of it, I'm sure, is that there's no crowd. There's like no crowd, and I mean, and no crowd is very much like takes a lot of away from it. So there was definitely, I would say, that too, which did not help it. So yeah. Then let's see. Then of course I didn't watch Dark this week. I didn't even watch the other Dark this week. And I didn't watch the special that they put on TNT for the pay-per-view. I didn't watch that either. I saw a lot of the video packages. It was really good. I had said on Twitter that I think a lot of people don't understand because they haven't been watching Ring of Honor, that the video packages for Ring of Honor in a lot of ways are better than a lot of the video packages that AEW has been doing. Now, leading up to the pay-per-view and like the pay-per-view stuff, those video packages have been like really good. And I think the way that Ring of Honor uses the video packages in some ways is better too. There's a lot of things that Ring of Honor does surprisingly just like better, even though they're not better, if that makes sense, than what AEW does. There's a lot of things just like production-wise. I think AEW could do a lot better, even though it's live. And part of it is that Ring of Honor is not live, and so they can fix a lot of things where, because AEW is often live, not so much, but there you go. But I did think the Go Home show, the Dynamite show, was really good. I thought that everything was perfect. I should say perfect. But I thought it did a really great job. I know a lot of people, like, just a week ago, a lot of people were like, oh, I don't know about this pay-per-view. There's not a great build-up. And then we get to this go-home show and everyone was like, I cannot wait to see this pay-per-view. I think a lot of that had to do with Kingston and Moxley, but I think there was a lot of other stuff that a lot of people were just ready to see at this point at as well. So there was that. And of course, then we just got right into, the pay-per-view that was tonight. But we also had New Japan, which they had their Power Struggle show, which was pretty much let's set up the Dome show for a lot. You had Yano versus Zack Jr., which they usually have for Yano matches pretty good. This was not one of those. Unfortunately, I felt like this was like the beginning and end of the shows was like, ugh, and then everything in between was like really good. Shingo versus Suzuki was great. Imagine that. Okada versus Okan was not so great, but it kind of led up to the whole Will Ospreay challenge. Okan is Okan. If you can't have a good match with Okada, yeah. So there was that. We had KENTA, KENTA, which a lot of people thought might actually lose versus Tanahashi. It's definitely like you can tell that they're phasing maybe Tanahashi out a little bit, but this was still like a really good match. This was better than most KENTA matches, and it was like fun for me to see because I will probably always be a big KENTA fan, and him versus Tanahashi was just like fun to see. And this was like a great match, a really good match, I should say. Then you had, for the briefcase, you had Jay White actually beating Ibushi, which was, definitely, I think, a setup because we're having 2 Dome shows again. And I think this sets up a lot of, like, how that's going to work and the fact you're going to have 2 nights of main events and how the 2 main events are kind of have to be. So I think that's what a lot of that is. I still expect Kota Ibushi to ultimately walk out after the Dome shows with the title. I expect that. I could be completely wrong, but that's what I expect. And then we had the main event, which was not so good, which was Naito versus Evil. They don't really click anyways, and then you throw in the whole, Bullet Club stuff, and it just didn't really work at all, and was just kind of like, wow, I'm not into this. So anyways, then we get to Full Gear, which was a great show. I can easily say that I thought it was a great show. You had the buy-in, which they put Serena Deeb versus Allysin Kay for the NWA title. I thought this was pretty good. I wouldn't say great, but I thought it was pretty good. I will talk about the women later, but I thought this was, especially for a buy-in match. I still think that this is not what you necessarily want to put on the buy-in. I think that it would have been better to have just like a crazy kind of match to get people like really going, and then kind of go from there. But it was what it was. Then we actually got to the show. They started right off the bat with Omega versus Page, which very easily could have been like one of the best, opening shows pretty much of like all time. I wouldn't say it was that. I thought this was great. However, I thought they did like an amazing job living up to the hype that I'm sure a lot of people probably didn't think they would. But yeah, it was really, really, really great. Definitely set up everything that you expect it to set up. I really do think they'll play everything out, and probably All Out will have a rematch of Omega and Page for the title, where Page wins. There will probably be, I would think by then, I would hope by then, you'll have a massive crowd there, and it will be like good stuff. So yeah, I would, and then Page beats Omega there. So I really think that's kind of where they're going. So that's good. Then we had John Silver versus Orange Cassidy, which was good, I would say. I would have rather, they went out and they had a like wrestling match with a little bit of comedy in it. Personally, I would have rather them have more of a comedy match. I think both guys would not have been hurt from that just because of both guys' gimmicks and their stories and everything. I think it would have fit both guys fine. I think it would have fit the match. I think both these guys are good enough where they could have went out and done that, and it would have been perfect. But instead, we just got kind of like, I would say the current basic Orange Cassidy match, which I think isn't as good, because I think you kind of still want, especially when Orange Cassidy isn't like wrestling for a title per se, I think you can go out there and you can have kind of like the old kind of him having fun comedy match, and it would be fine. And that's not to say that's not what we got to some extent, but it was just kind of like, I don't want to say there, but it was just kind of not, like I said, not there, but it was good. I would say it was good. So yeah. So then we had Darby Allin versus Cody Rhodes. This was great. Imagine that. I thought Darby Allin won, which I think was the perfect way. I definitely can see Darby Allin winning. Because I thought that you probably should have had Orange Cassidy win the title before, but if you're going to have Darby Allin win it, then it completely makes sense. And then after the match, they definitely set up the whole Team Taz versus Darby Allin thing, so that was good. I really, really liked this match, so yeah, I was into it pretty much the whole time. I did think the ending kind of came out of nowhere, but other than that, then we had probably the worst match of the night, Nyla Rose versus Shida. But I think Shida gets the most out of Rose that I think anybody really can. But the thing with Rose is that once you get to a point, kind of once she gets tired, then things slow way down. Things start not looking as good. So them going, I guess they didn't go too long. It felt like they went long, and they went almost 15 minutes. I really think you need to keep it like probably around 10, and it would have been fine. I will say this. I think whenever there's an AEW women's match, you get the same stuff. People complaining, saying, oh, AEW does such a crappy job. Like, people were complaining that this had no build, and I'm like, no build. They've been talking about the fact that Nyla was the number one contender for months now, that she didn't get her rematch for months now. It's the number one contender versus the champion. You really don't need a massive soap opera storyline around this. This is exactly what it needed to be, especially since Shida won. So it's it's fine the way it is. And then you get the they need to invest more into the women's with more talent, forgetting the fact that most of the best talent they have can't wrestle for them right now. For example, their most over woman cannot come to the country currently. That's a problem. They forget there's 7 women who would probably be at the top, of the women's division right now, who cannot wrestle in the country right now or won't wrestle in the country right now. And then you get these people who are like, it's so horrible, it's so bad. And the whole reason is because when they started, before they started, WWE signed everybody in the U.S. Pretty much any woman that had any kind of glimpse of talent, they signed that they could find. And that left AEW not with a lot of people. And so the plan was, we're going to bring in these Japanese women that are really good, and they're going to carry the division until we can take these women who we see have talent, they see can be really great. And when they, when they get to that point, then we can start focusing on them. And unfortunately, stuff happened, and they couldn't do that. And now you're stuck with a bunch of, women without a lot of experience who are not quite ready for that role, and you get matches and you get stuff that's just not quite as good. And that's kind of how the women's division is. And it's just kind of like, eh. Then we got FTR versus the Young Bucks. I thought this was pretty good. I know some people absolutely thought this was amazing. I'm not one of those people. I didn't think it was really good. I don't know. There was a large stretch of this match that I thought was kind of boring. I think once it got going, it was really good, but I think it needed to be at that level kind of the entire time, and it wasn't. It was still really good. You had the Young Bucks finally winning titles, so that was cool. I think one of the problems is the Young Bucks need FTR to be more like the Briscoes for these matches to be really great, and they're not. So I think that brings it down a little bit, but maybe that's the Briscoe mark in me talking. I don't know. Still, I just didn't feel it was great. I thought it was really, 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 really good though. So yeah. Then you had Matt Hardy versus Sammy Guevara. This was fun, I would say, as far as a cinematic match goes, as far as a match like this goes. There were some nice little callbacks, Gangrel, Hurricane Helms, the fact that they kind of, broke the third wall a little bit and were like, hey, it took me 2 years to finish this part of the storyline. Don't complain. Oh, that was pretty funny. But yeah, that was pretty good stuff. Then we had MJF versus Chris Jericho. Thought this was pretty good, not great. I think most people would say where MJF kind of lacks is in the ring. Part of that is because of the gimmick. Part of that is he's just young. But his character is so good. The finish of this match was perfect, absolutely perfect. MJF won. He's now part of the Inner Circle. The rest of the Inner Circle, of course, wasn't there, but Jack, Hager was. So Wardlow is also part of the Inner Circle, and I love the fact that they were just like Wardlow and Hager were just kind of sizing each other up the entire time. It was pretty fun because you could just kind of see it. I'm not saying they would have a great match, but you definitely see kind of where they're going with it. I think this is another thing where this is going to be a long storyline, and then we'll finally there you go. Then we got the main event, Jon Moxley versus Eddie Kingston. This was a crazy, hardcore brawl, which they kind of hinted that they were going to do. Thought this was pretty good. I went a little long, I think, but I think it was pretty good. But yeah, right guy won. I know a lot of people wanted Eddie Kingston to win, but you're getting Eddie, or you're getting Moxley versus Omega, which I think is going to be really big, and I think Omega will win. So I think that makes more sense, especially if that's where you're going. So there you go. I will say this one thing that I did really like about the AEW pay-per-view, and if you watched it, the commentary team basically being able to talk about anything in pro wrestling. And I did forget I forgot about that. Speaking of which, during the main event, they actually had Talus out there talking about Impact. So yeah, all this stuff going on that maybe they're going to work with everybody. The only ones they're not, it looks like, is ROH, at least for the moment. I think that's good because I think them working. I think everybody kind of needs to work with everybody because I think it keeps people fresh. I think it gives you fresh matches, especially if you keep it like, hey, every once in a while somebody from the outside comes in. I think that helps. So yeah. But yeah. Other than that, I thought the show was like, even though what was it, 3.5 hours, 3 hours and 45 minutes, whatever it was, wasn't like the last one, which really dragged. This one did not drag nearly as much, and part of that was because it was for the most part great. But that's that. So with that, I'm out. You guys have a good one, and I'll talk to you later.